The two trees that we cut that I think Shelby filmed were dead. Typically you'll leave a lot of dead trees. This area was commercially logged and those were dead trees that they left. And it's good to have dead trees because they provide habitat for a lot of the wildlife, but you don't really need more than about one dead tree per acre. They call them snags. And that area where we were cutting had plenty of snags, and we were able to get some use out of these trees that have had no commercial value to the commercial mills, and we were able to make some really nice lumber out of it. Whether you're cutting a live tree or a dead tree, the process is very similar, just about the same. But a lot of times with a dead tree you have to be more careful because they're not as predictable. Fortunately, the trees that we cut down that were dead had not been dead long, so they behave more like a live tree than a dead tree, so that they're actually safer. Alright, so the first thing is determine where to fell the tree. You know, where is it going to go? Is it leaning a certain direction? Does it have will it have a tendency to go in one area more than another? And then we determine where we want to fell the tree, and we open the notch, the triangular or wedge-shaped notch on that side of the tree where we want it to fall. And then generally what you use to steer the tree on the way down while it's falling to where you want it is a hinge, and your hinge should be about 80% across the diameter of the tree where you cut the tree. So after we made the wedge cut, the notch, we come in from behind the notch, slightly above the apex of the notch, and do the back cut. And on the back cut, cut in, and after the chainsaw clears, and you can start pounding in the wedges so that the tree doesn't, if it were to have weight towards the back of the tree instead of the way we want to fall it, your wedge will keep it from sitting back on your saw chain and your saw bar. So anyway, go ahead and make the back cut, and you don't saw all the way through because that area between your back cut and the notch is what becomes the hinge, and that's what actually guides the tree and steers the tree as it's falling and gives you control of the tree all the way to the ground. So make the back cut, drive the wedge in a little tighter, and when it starts to go, retreat from the cutting zone and at a 45-degree angle, and watch what's going on, and if you do it right, it hits where it should. And after the tree's on the ground, use your logging tape and determine how long the logs are that you want to cut. And in this case, I think the butt log we cut a little bit longer, and the rest of them we were cutting to get 8 feet boards out of, 8-foot long boards out of. And when you're cutting to get 8-foot boards, you typically buck the logs at 8.6 or 8.4 or 8.6. You want to give yourself a little extra. So we bucked the logs, cut them to length, moved them, and the next step was to prepare to mill them. And if any of the ones that were dirty, we washed them. I don't have a debarker, so wash them, and that gets the sand and mud and grit out of the bark, which really dulls the bandsaw blades on the sawmill. Alright, so we pressure wash, get rid of the bark or the dirt, mud, and grit. Put them on the mill. I prefer to saw from the small end of the log, but it really doesn't matter. You can saw from the big end or the small end. I prefer the small end because I can look at that and determine what size cant. The cant is the square part that you're going to get most of your boards out of, that you saw out of a round log. And the cant typically will be 2/3 of the diameter of the small end of your log. So if I had a 12-inch diameter log, I can get an 8-inch cant, and then I would get boards out of the cant. I slice the cant into boards, and then also the slabs. When you open the log up, you've got to make cuts to expose the wood, after you make your opening cut to get down to your cant size, you can also get some boards out of those flitches, and then they become your side lumber. And that's all I got to say about that.